A thing we love to do in sports is play what if. What if they didn't make this trade? What if this player didn't get hurt? What if they made a different draft pick for the better or for worse? And today we are going to talk about every NBA team's biggest what if since the 2010 season. So yeah, I may put some of you guys in your bag in this video. Maybe a player got hurt, maybe your team messed up a specific decision, and we're going to talk about every team's biggest what if in my opinion. Like always, if you agree or disagree with any of these, let me know in the comments below. So we're going to start off with the Knicks. What if they signed Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in the 2019 offseason? The Knicks were one of the biggest laughingstocks in the NBA throughout the 2010s, and they hit rock bottom in the 2019 season when they tanked for Zion Williamson that year, putting out some of the worst lineups in franchise history. And a lot of NBA reporters, including Stephen A. at the time, hinted that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant wanted to play with each other because both of them were free agents in the 2019 offseason. Kyrie's season with Boston did not end well. They got bounced in round number 2. Kevin Durant was injured from the 2019 finals against the Toronto Raptors, and both of them ended up pairing up with each other in New York, but in Brooklyn, not at Madison Square Garden. So that is a really big what if, because the Knicks right now are in a better situation than the Brooklyn Nets. The Knicks never would have signed Jalen Brunson. Who knows how long KD and Kyrie would have worked out in New York? Would both of them or one of them still be on the Knicks today? Would they have acquired James Harden? A lot of what ifs there, and it's kind of a blessing in disguise that the Knicks did not get KD and Kyrie in 2019, which is crazy to say. For the Boston Celtics, what if the Bucks do not trade for Damian Lillard in the 2023 offseason? I think this is actually an interesting one to look at, because you could look at for the Boston Celtics, maybe what if they don't trade for Kyrie Irving and they continued their rebuild there? What if they didn't sign Kemba Walker? But a corresponding move that they made last year when they were able to go out and trade for Jrue Holiday made them a finals contender even more in the 2024 season. And in my opinion, if they didn't trade for Jrue Holiday, I don't think they win the NBA Finals last year. And they never would have had the opportunity to trade for Jrue Holiday if the Bucks didn't trade Jrue to Portland for Damian Lillard. It is funny to look at that the Bucks ended up helping the Boston Celtics get an NBA title indirectly. The Toronto Raptors, what if Kawhi Leonard re-signed with the Raptors after the 2019 season? With Kevin Durant leaving Golden State and going to the Brooklyn Nets, the NBA became wide open again. There was going to be a lot of parity on the horizon, and if Kawhi Leonard re-signed with the Toronto Raptors and they ran that team back that in 2019 they won a championship with, they would have been in prime position to repeat in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard was going into his age 28 season, one of the best players in the league, joined with Pascal Siakam, Serge Ibaka, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, Norman Powell, OG Anunoby. This was a very deep Raptors team, and if you had Kawhi Leonard at the peak of it, this team definitely could have beaten Boston, Miami, and Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference to go back to the NBA Finals. Speaking of Kawhi, for the Philadelphia 76ers, what if Kawhi Leonard misses that shot in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals in the 2019 playoffs? This was the closest the Philadelphia 76ers got to making it to the conference finals in the Joel Embiid era. They were one shot away, one overtime run away from making it to the conference finals, and a team with Embiid, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Jimmy Butler, and JJ Redick were definitely in prime position to beat Giannis and the Bucks in that 2019 conference finals. And who knows, maybe if Kawhi misses that shot, Philadelphia beats Milwaukee, they beat a banged up Golden State in the NBA Finals, and Embiid has a ring right now. For the Brooklyn Nets, what if Kevin Durant's foot wasn't on the line in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Milwaukee Bucks in 2021? Kevin Durant had an elite first year with the Brooklyn Nets in 2021. He averaged 29 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 7.5 assists, and he was unreal against Milwaukee in round number 2. That all led to Game 7 with the game on the line, 109-107. Brooklyn was down by 2. 6 seconds remaining. The inbound pass goes to Kevin Durant. He hits an unreal clutch shot, but his feet were too big. His foot was on the line. The Nets go to overtime. The Bucks outscored the Nets 6-2 in OT. There was just one more full year with Kevin Durant in Brooklyn. James Harden got sent to Philadelphia at the 2022 trade deadline. Kyrie and KD were sent off of Brooklyn at the 2023 trade deadline, and this was the closest Brooklyn got to making a playoff run with the big three of Harden, Kyrie, and KD. What if KD's foot, man, wasn't that big? For the Atlanta Hawks, what if they didn't trade down in the 2018 draft and they drafted Luka Doncic with the 3rd overall pick? How different would we look look at the Atlanta Hawks today, if they had Luka Doncic instead of Trae Young, this team had a lot of assets at the time. They made another nice first-round pick in 2018, picking up Kevin Huerter. They had a young John Collins on their team who would have been a great pick-and-roll partner with Luka Doncic in the half court. And with Trae Young, they made it to the conference finals in the 2021 season, beating the Knicks, beating the 76ers in the playoffs. And what would have happened if they had Luka Doncic at the time? Luka Doncic is an undisputed top 5 player in the sport, and we'd look at the Hawks completely differently if they didn't trade down to get a future first-round pick, which ended up being Cam Reddish, from the Mavericks to take Trae Young, while Dallas got Luka Doncic. For the Charlotte Hornets, we're going to go back to when they were the Bobcats during the 2012 draft lottery. They were coming off the worst winning percentage season in NBA history, and they got unlucky in the lottery. They fell from 1 to 2, and they selected Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. How different could the Hornets look if they had Kemba Walker and Anthony Davis, who was the number 1 overall pick during that draft, who obviously went to the New Orleans Hornets at the time, and an AD Kemba Walker pick and roll partnership could have been really good throughout a weaker Eastern Conference in the 2010s. For the Miami Heat, what if Chris Bosh's career didn't get cut short by blood clots? I know they weren't the same as the Heatles, but the post-LeBron Miami Heat team was actually going to be a very entertaining squad to roll with. Chris Bosh's last full season was in 2016, and he was coming off his 11th straight All-Star appearance. The 2016 Heat roster was a fun one. They went 48-34 that season under Eric Spoelstra. You had Chris Bosh, you still had Goran Dragic, Dwayne Wade, Hassan Whiteside emerging as a legitimate rim protector in this league, younger guys like Justice Winslow and Josh Richardson. The Heat could have definitely made a run in the mid-2010s, maybe have gotten another big name if Chris Bosh didn't have to retire. For the Washington Wizards, what if they didn't draft Jan Vesely with the 6th overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft? They drafted their franchise point guard when they got lucky in 2010 with John Wall out of Kentucky with the number 1 overall pick. In 2012, they did a phenomenal job drafting Bradley Beal out of Florida with the 3rd overall pick. Imagine they just took a different wing in 2011. You had guys like Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, Klay Thompson, all on the board that still played a similar position than Jan Vesely, and Vesely just ended up playing 162 career games, a big 3 of Wall, Beal, and let's say Kawhi Leonard could have won a title in the Eastern Conference in the 2010. For the Orlando Magic, what if they didn't trade for Serge Ibaka in the 2016 offseason? Prior to this trade, the Magic had a really fun young core on its horizon. They had Victor Oladipo, who was the 2nd overall pick in the 2013 draft. They just recently drafted Domantas Sabonis in the 2016 draft out of Gonzaga. You had younger pieces around them still, like Nikola Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, Elfrid Payton, Tobias Harris, and Evan Fournier. They were building something in Orlando, but they ended up trading Sabonis and Victor Oladipo for Serge Ibaka, who didn't even make it through the 2017 season in Orlando. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, what if Kyrie Irving didn't get hurt in the 2015 finals? You could also go with Cleveland, what if the Warriors never added Kevin Durant? How many titles would LeBron's second go in Cleveland have? Would there even be a Kyrie Irving requested trade in the 2017 offseason? 22-year-old Kyrie Irving only played 1 game in the 2015 finals where he had 23 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists, and didn't play again in that finals in which the Warriors won their first one in the Curry, Thompson, and Draymond era. For the Detroit Pistons, what if they didn't trade for Blake Griffin at the 2018 trade deadline? I wouldn't say that the Pistons would be in a much better position today, but this trade just seems short-sighted. They ended up trading away Avery Bradley, Tobias Harris, Boban Marjanovic, a future first-round pick that ended up being Miles Bridges in exchange for Blake Griffin. And while Blake Griffin was fantastic for the Pistons in the 2019 season, making All-NBA 3rd team and brought the Pistons to the playoffs, that was it. They only made the playoffs in 2019, and they've been rebuilding ever since. For the Indiana Pacers, what if Game 5 in the first round of the 2018 playoffs went differently against Cleveland? This was an insanely competitive series in round number 1. This Cavs team was one of the worst Cavs teams of the LeBron era. The Pacers were tied 2-2 against Cleveland, but they lost Game 5 98-95 in what was looked at as a goaltend that went Cleveland's way. Indiana blew out Cleveland in Game 6, but lost Game 7 101-105, and a Victor Oladipo-led Pacers team almost knocked off the GOAT in 2018. For the Milwaukee Bucks, what if Jabari Parker never got injured? The Bucks were building something special throughout the mid-2010s. They took Giannis in the first round in 2013, took Jabari Parker in the first round in 2014. In the same offseason, they drafted Jabari Parker 2nd overall. They traded for Chris Middleton from the Detroit Pistons. There were some nice young wings in Milwaukee throughout the mid-2010s, and while they did end up getting an NBA Finals victory 7 years later in 2021, it hurt a little bit that Jabari Parker, who was so skilled and talented coming out of Duke, never lived up to his fullest potential due to major knee injuries. And speaking of knee injuries, for the Chicago Bulls, what if Derrick Rose never got injured? Derrick Rose was the biggest Chicago star since Michael Jordan. He was the youngest MVP in NBA history in 2011, where he was a 22-year-old who averaged 25 points, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds a night, and won an MVP in 81 games. But unfortunately, ACL injuries were the death of his superstar career. 39 games in 2012, did not play a single game in 2013, 10 games in 2014, 51 games in 2015, and that core of Joakim Noah, Jimmy Butler, Derrick Rose, and Luol Deng never lived up to its fullest potential because of Derrick Rose's injuries. We're going to be on the trend of injuries here. For the Houston Rockets, what if Chris Paul did not get injured in the 2018 Western Conference Finals? The Houston Rockets were arguably the best team in the NBA in the 2018 season, led behind their elite backcourt of James Harden and Chris Paul. They beat the Timberwolves in 5 in round number 1. They beat the Jazz in 5 in round number 2, and they had a chance to be the NBA's best hope in knocking off the Kevin Durant Golden State Warriors. They were up 3-2, winning game 5 at home 98-94, but unfortunately in that game, Chris Paul suffered a hamstring injury and was out in game 6 and game 7 the rest of the Western Conference playoffs. The Warriors blew out the Rockets in game 6. We all know about the Houston Rockets shooting performance in game 7, and what if Chris Paul didn't get hurt in game 5? For the Dallas Mavericks, what if they were good in 2023? This is an interesting one. You could look at some of the horrible decisions they made in the final years of Dirk Nowitzki and his time in the NBA, but in 2023, the Dallas Mavericks ended up trading for Kyrie Irving at that trade deadline. They needed a spark to their team, but what if everything was going well for them? What if everything was clicking on all cylinders and the Mavericks were going to make the playoffs again in 2023, coming off their conference finals appearance in 2022? Who knows if they would have ever traded for Kyrie Irving, and if they weren't that bad, they wouldn't have missed out on the play-in tournament, therefore been in the draft lottery and had the opportunity to draft Derek Lively, and Derek Lively and Kyrie were such vital parts to their 2024 finals appearance. For the San Antonio Spurs, what if Kawhi Leonard didn't get injured against the Golden State Warriors in the 2017 playoffs? 2017 is when the Warriors dominated the playoffs, but game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, they faced their toughest test yet. They ended up just barely beating the Spurs 113-111 at home, but who knows, San Antonio could have won that game if Zaza Pachulia didn't land in Kawhi Leonard's landing zone after he took a jumper late in that game. Kawhi gets hurt in game number 1. They go on to lose every single game and they get swept, but this injury had bigger ramifications for the Spurs. Kawhi Leonard was then banged up again in 2018, only appearing in 9 games, and there was disgruntlement with him in the organization. And then after that, 2018 offseason, he got traded to the Toronto Raptors. What if Kawhi never got hurt in that game 1? For the Memphis Grizzlies, what if they didn't get extremely lucky during the 2019 draft lottery? The Grizzlies did great in the 2018 draft. They drafted Jaren Jackson Jr. with the 4th overall pick. This team was in a new era. They moved on from Marc Gasol during the 2019 season. Mike Conley got traded in the 2019 offseason. But this Grizzlies pick was projected to be number 8, and they had a 42% chance of dropping, and Boston owned that pick if it wasn't in the top 8. But Memphis gets lucky like New Orleans on draft night. They go from 8-2, draft Ja Morant, and the rest is history. For the New Orleans Pelicans, what if DeMarcus Cousins didn't get hurt in the 2018 season? It was a small sample size for the Pelicans and DeMarcus Cousins when he got traded in the 2017 regular season. The Pelicans didn't make the playoffs that year, but they got one of the best centers in the game for a discounted price. Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins were some of the best big men in all of the NBA, and the 2018 Pelicans surrounded that front court with Drew Holiday, Nikola Mirotic, Etuan Moore, Rajon Rondo, but DeMarcus Cousins tore his Achilles in January of 2018, and that was it for his time in New Orleans. The Pelicans went 48-34 that year, swept Portland in round number 1, but went up against Golden State in round number 2 and were clearly outmatched without DeMarcus Cousins, and they lost in 5. For the LA Lakers, it's gotta be, what if the Chris Paul trade wasn't vetoed? In December of 2011, the rumored trade was gonna send Chris Paul from New Orleans to Los Angeles. The Houston Rockets were gonna get Pau Gasol, and the New Orleans Hornets were gonna get Lamar Odom, Luis Scola, Kevin Martin, Goran Dragic, and a 2012 first-round pick from the Houston Rockets. And in hindsight, this was a better return than what the Hornets got for Chris Paul originally, but who knows if the Lakers would have been well off if they ended up moving Pau Gasol. Either way, they didn't win a title after this trade fell through, but what if we got to see Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant play together in 2011? For the LA Clippers, it has to be, what if they didn't make the Paul George trade in the summer of 2019? Now that Paul George has left the Clippers and signed with the Philadelphia 76ers this offseason, we know that him and Kawhi Leonard as a duo were not going to win a title in Los Angeles. They had one conference finals appearance in 2021, but Kawhi Leonard was injured and they lost to the Phoenix Suns. The pieces that Oklahoma City got back in that trade: Danilo Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's one of the best players in the NBA. Trey Mann was selected with one of those picks. Jalen Williams, Jaime Jaquez, Dylan Jones, and there's still some more picks to be determined from this trade. And I wonder where Los Angeles would be at this point if they just developed Shai over time and they had those draft picks used for either their drafting purposes or they paired up Shai with a good player down the line using those picks. For the Phoenix Suns, what if they didn't blow a 2-0 lead in the 2022 playoffs? In 2021, the Suns went 51-21. They beat the Lakers in round 1, Nuggets in round 2, Clippers in round 3, but lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA Finals, and they were up 2-0 in that series as well, then proceeded to lose 4 in a row. And I said they went 51-21. In the following year, in 2022, they were clearly the best team in the NBA. They went 64-18. They were a top 5 offensive team, a top 5 defensive team. They beat the Pelicans in 6 in round number 1, but they blew a 2-0 lead to the Dallas Mavericks in the conference semifinals to lose in 7, and we all know that Game 7 performance, they ended up losing by 33. And on paper, I still think that Suns team was better than Golden State, was better than Boston, and that was probably their best chance to be back to the NBA Finals because they haven't come close to that since. For the Sacramento Kings, what if they didn't whiff on every single draft pick outside of De'Aaron Fox after they drafted DeMarcus Cousins in 2010? It's insane how bad some of these top 10 picks were after they took DeMarcus Cousins. In 2011, they drafted Jimmer Fredette 10th overall. In 2012, they drafted Thomas Robinson, even a bigger bust, 5th overall. In 2013, Ben McLemore 7th overall. In 2014, Nick Stauskas 8th overall. In 2015, Willie Cauley-Stein 6th overall. In 2016, they ended up with Georges Papagiannis and Malachi Richardson, as well as Scalop Bissiere going 0 for 3 on first round draft picks. In 2017, though, when DeMarcus Cousins was no longer on this team, they finally made a good draft pick in the 2010s, selecting De'Aaron Fox with the 5th overall pick, but then drafted Justin Jackson at 15 and Harry Giles at 20, going 0 for 2 there outside the lottery. And then in 2018, they drafted Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic with the 2nd overall pick. Who knows where the Kings would be if they just hit on any of those draft picks between DeMarcus Cousins and De'Aaron Fox, or what if they just drafted Luka in 2018? You could do a lot of what ifs for the Golden State Warriors because a lot of those what ifs could determine what ended up happening with their dynasty team in the 2010s. I think one big one though is what if Steph Curry did not sign a 4-year, $44 million extension with Golden State in 2013. Steph was coming off his best year yet, averaging 23 points and 7 assists, but what Golden State and Curry didn't know, how much the NBA's cap space was going to explode in a few years, and it ended up being at the perfect time where Steph Curry, coming off a unanimous MVP season in 2016, helping the Warriors win 73 games in the regular season, was making just $11 million a year, which resulted in the Golden State Warriors having a max slot in free agency in 2016, and they were able to use that on one of the best players in the NBA in Kevin Durant. Truly, everything just worked out for Golden State in 2016 to pair up Kevin Durant to a 73-win Warriors team. And they could have moved on from Curry or Klay Thompson. There's plenty of what ifs there either up until 2015. Or what if they didn't fire Mark Jackson? Who knows, man? There's just so many what ifs with the Warriors. For the Oklahoma City Thunder, you gotta talk about them trading James Harden in 2012. I just mentioned how much it worked out for the Golden State Warriors when the cap exploded in the mid-2010s. Well, this was not the same for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They didn't realize that they were going to actually be able to afford James Harden along with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, and they traded him to Houston in 2012. And while Harden probably wouldn't have been Rockets Harden as the 3rd scoring option in OKC, they didn't realize that they were going to be trading away a generational scorer at the shooting guard position, someone that ended up winning 3 scoring titles and an MVP award in Houston. Another interesting what if could be, what if Russell Westbrook didn't get injured in Game 2 of the 2013 playoffs against the Houston Rockets and his tie-up with Patrick Beverley? A lot of people thought the Thunder could have gone back to the NBA Finals that year. For the Utah Jazz, it's what if Donovan Mitchell didn't get hurt in the 2021 playoffs. In 2021, the Utah Jazz were the 1 seed in the Western Conference. They were 52-20. They had a great lineup of Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Royce O'Neal, and Donovan Mitchell gets banged up with Edmund Sumner towards the end of the 2021 regular season. Utah was on a 62-win pace before Sumner got tangled up with Donovan Mitchell. And so many what ifs come from this as well. Maybe if Mitchell doesn't get hurt, he gets on an all-NBA team and he can get a supermax from Utah. Maybe Joe Ingles doesn't overtax himself over the final month of the regular season and has more left in the tank for the eventual Clippers series. Maybe Mitchell isn't banged up in round number 1 against Memphis. That doesn't go to a game 5 and Mike Conley tweaks his hamstring in that game 5. And obviously maybe Donovan Mitchell doesn't re-aggravate this injury in game 2 of the second round against the LA Clippers, which resulted in them not making it to the conference finals, which was a major disappointment for them. For the Portland Trailblazers, what if they drafted Bam Adebayo over Zach Collins in the 2017 draft? This one's gotta hurt if you're a Blazers fan. Bam Adebayo went 14th overall, the big man out of Kentucky in 2017, but Portland decided to trade picks 15 and 20 to go up to number 10 to select Zach Collins, the big man out of Gonzaga. Collins just spent 3 years in Portland and started just 12 games across those 3 seasons, including just playing 11 games total in year number 3 in 2020, while Bam Adebayo has turned into one of the best defensive players in all of basketball. Maybe Bam Adebayo could have prolonged the CJ McCollum and Damian backcourt just a little bit longer in Portland. For Minnesota, what if they didn't trade for Jimmy Butler during the 2017 draft? So since we're going back to 2010, they just missed out on the 2009 draft, which is obviously a big what if for them. But what if Minnesota didn't try to make a win now move for Jimmy Butler? What if they kept on to Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and just drafted Lauri Markkanen with the 7th overall pick? The team went 31 and 51 in 2017. They could have added those guys to Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Ricky Rubio. They did go 47 and 35 in 2018, one of their best records of the 21st century, but all that just to lose in round number 1, and then they did have to trade Jimmy Butler very early into the 2019 season and basically got pennies on the dollars in return for that. And the last one is for the Denver Nuggets. What if they didn't trade away Donovan Mitchell during the 2017 draft? Donovan Mitchell was a true shooting guard coming out of Louisville, so it's not like he was going to take minutes away from Jamal Murray, and obviously no minutes away from Nikola Jokic. What if there was a big 3 of Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, and Nikola Jokic in Denver? On draft night, they traded away Donovan Mitchell to the Utah Jazz for Tyler Lydon and Trey Lyles, and that could have been one of the more exciting big 3s of the 2020s, but if that happens, they don't draft Michael Porter Jr. in 2018, and who knows, maybe they don't win the 2023 NBA title. So that is gonna be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy this video talking about every team's biggest what if since 2010. If you agree or disagree with your team selection, please let me know in the comments below. And if you did enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate it if you drop a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you're not already. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.